This vaccine is this punishment was up by its enemy by the toss. Like so the link to the video will be the description on below. Go and check them out. So let's into this vaccine in 3, 2, 1.
Miracles are supposed to feel divine,
Yeah.
gentle, awe-inspiring, wrapped in light. But the
Yeah.
miracle that tore through Jake Rivers' life arrived in the dark, dripping with blood and terror. At 3 in the morning, he lay doubled over
Really?
on the floor of his apartment, pain tearing through his abdomen like a storm. Something was happening inside him. Something impossible, something no doctor, no human being could explain. Jake Rivers, 32
Wow. Really?
years old, 6 feet tall, once captain of his college basketball team, was pregnant.
Uh, what? You was punished? Congrats?
For months, he had ignored the whispers of his
Oh, you look like a baby bump.
own body, the nausea that
Yeah.
came in waves, the fatigue that no amount of coffee could fight,
Yeah.
the strange, inexplicable hunger for foods he'd once despised. He blamed stress,
Being punished came back to want some weird food items, you know.
burnout, maybe the depression that had shadowed him since his company collapsed 5 years ago. But when he first felt movement beneath
Oh, yep, that's a baby bump.
his ribs, when his hand brushed across his abdomen and felt a flutter that wasn't gas or muscle twitch, something inside him froze. Denial gave way to terror. The tests, 7 of them, each painted the same impossible truth, positive. His first reaction had been laughter,
Oh,
the hollow
congrats.
kind that hides panic. But the doctor's eyes during that first appointment told him this was no hallucination. The ultrasounds showed it, the shape, the heartbeat, the life forming inside him. Somehow, against all logic and biology, Jake Rivers was 4 months pregnant. The world narrowed
Wow, 4 months punished. Congrats.
after that. The doctors couldn't explain it. Some called it an anomaly of nature. Others whispered about experimental hormone therapies gone wrong, and a few simply refused to discuss it at all. Jake stopped telling people. He worked from home, stopped visiting
Oh,
the gym, and learned to cradle the small curve growing beneath his shirts in the privacy of his apartment.
yeah.
He hated himself for the fear that clung to him, for the tenderness that began to replace the shame. Each heartbeat he heard in those sterile ultrasound rooms was both a comfort and a curse. He
Yeah,
wasn't
cause
ready to be a
really.
parent. He wasn't ready to be a miracle. Then came the night everything fell apart. It started with a dull ache low in his stomach, the kind that stole his breath. By midnight, the cramps had turned savage. He stumbled to the bathroom and saw blood, too much of it. Panic rose like bile. He
Oh,
reached for his phone, trying to dial emergency services, but the screen went black. Dead battery. His car, sitting useless in the parking lot below, refused to start when he tried it hours earlier. The city was sleeping, the silence thick and merciless. He screamed for help once, twice, but no one came. And then he saw the name on his phone, the one name he'd promised never to press again. Marcus Chun. The memory of Marcus still burned like acid. They had once been
really?
brothers in everything but blood, co-founders, dreamers, rebels against the corporate world,
Yeah.
but now enemies. But that night, bleeding and terrified,
Oh,
Jake's hand trembled over the screen. He had no one else. The hospitals were miles away. His family lived states away. The only person close enough to reach him in time was the man who had ruined him. He pressed call. The phone
wow.
rang once, twice, and then Jake. Marcus's voice, sharp with confusion. Jake could barely speak. Help, bleeding, hospital, please. There was a pause. Then 3 words, steady and immediate. I'm coming now. For minutes later, the pounding on his door echoed like salvation. Marcus burst inside, his face pale, his shirt hastily buttoned, hair wet from the rain. He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask why or how. He simply lifted Jake's arm over his shoulder, half carrying him down 3 flights of stairs, his breath ragged, his voice a constant stream of reassurance. Stay with me. Don't pass out. We're almost there. Jake could barely see. The world dissolved into pain
Wow.
and flashing streetlights. Marcus drove like a madman, through red lights, down empty streets slick with rain, one hand gripping Jake's, as if anchoring him to the earth. Jake vomited halfway through the ride,
Oh,
and Marcus only said, It's okay. Just breathe. Every time Jake's voice faltered, Marcus said, I've got you. I promise I've got you. When they reached the hospital, Marcus
Yeah.
didn't wait for permission. He parked illegally outside the emergency entrance, ran for a wheelchair, and pushed Jake through the doors, shouting for help. Nurses swarmed. The fluorescent lights stabbed at Jake's vision as voices overlapped. Blood pressure, pulse, transfusion, fetal distress. Someone said, how is this possible? And another snapped, forget the how. Just stabilize him. Jake felt Marcus's hand slipping from his own as they wheeled him towards surgery. Panic surged, and his fingers closed around Marcus's sleeve, refusing to let go. Stay, he whispered, his voice breaking. And Marcus stayed. The next hours became a blur of white walls and beeping monitors. Jake's body was breaking under the strain of a pregnancy
Wow.
it was never designed to sustain. The doctors spoke in fragments. Placental rupture, hemorrhage, organ stress. They prepped him for emergency surgery. Somewhere in that chaos, Marcus called Jake's parents. He didn't try to explain the impossible, only said, your son needs you. Come now. Then he waited, 7 hours in a plastic chair, Jake's blood still drying on his hands, refusing food, refusing rest, praying to a God he hadn't spoken to in years. When the surgeon finally emerged at dawn, eyes tired but relieved, he said the words Marcus hadn't dared to hope for. He's alive. And so is the baby. Marcus's knees gave out. He sat there, trembling, as the reality settled over him. Against every law of biology, against every logical explanation, Jake and the child had survived. When Jake woke, he saw Marcus slumped in the chair beside his bed, his face hollowed by exhaustion. For a long moment, neither spoke. There was too much between them, years of resentment,
Literally.
of betrayal, of silence. Finally, Jake's voice cracked through the quiet. Thank you. Marcus's eyes lifted, wet and red-rimmed. I'm sorry. Jake swallowed hard. He knew what Marcus meant. Sorry for the company, for the greed, for everything that had shattered them. Sorry for the years wasted in pride. Sorry for the man he'd become. I've been sorry for 5 years, Marcus said softly. I just didn't know how to say it. The months that followed were
Yeah.
fragile. Jake's pregnancy became the subject of cautious wonder in medical circles, studied by specialists who could offer no answers. Each week brought new risks: high blood pressure, pain, complications
Wow.
no textbook could predict. His body bore the toll of an experiment written by fate itself. But Marcus stayed. Every day, he brought food Jake could stomach, carried him when walking became too hard, held his hand during tests that made even the doctors nervous. Sometimes they talked about the company, about betrayal, about the night everything changed. Sometimes they sat in silence, and that silence was enough. For Jake, the pregnancy was not just physical. It was spiritual, an unraveling of everything he believed about control, about masculinity, about what it meant to create life. The mirror became both his enemy and his teacher. His chest softened, his hips ached, his reflection no longer fit the man he'd always been. But inside him, there was heartbeat and motion, a reminder that pain and creation often walk the same path.
Yeah.
It happened 3 months later,
Mhm.
under the harsh glare of the operating room lights. The doctors performed a C-section. There was no other choice. Marcus was there because Jake had asked him to be. He stood beside him, gloved hands trembling, as the air filled with the sharp scent of antiseptic and fear. And then a cry, small, fierce, and impossibly human. The
Wow.
baby girl was lifted into the world,
Oh,
her
it
lungs
was a baby
declaring her
girl.
existence before Jake could even
Wow.
process it. They placed her on his chest, warm,
Hey, baby.
slick, perfect.
Wow.
Jake looked at her and felt something inside him fracture and heal all at once. She had his dark eyes. She blinked up at him, unaware of the impossibility that had brought her
Yeah.
here. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "You're real." Marcus turned away, wiping his eyes, but
Yeah.
Jake reached for his hand. For a moment, their fingers touched, the past forgiven in that single, trembling gesture. The world would never fully understand her birth, and maybe it didn't need to.
No,
What
they
mattered
didn't.
was that she existed, that she
Yeah.
had survived where logic said she couldn't. And
Yeah.
in that survival, she stitched 2 broken lives together. Marcus became her godfather, the quiet presence who brought flowers, toys, and a kind of humility Jake had never seen in him before. They never returned to their old friendship. It wasn't the same.
Mm,
But something new, quieter, and stronger grew in its place.
yeah.
Trust rebuilt not through promises, but through presence. Years later, when journalists and doctors still whispered about the miracle father, Jake rarely corrected them.
Miracle for
They
them.
wanted to know how. But for him, the real story was who. Who showed up? Who stayed? Who became
Yeah.
human again in the face of the impossible?
Mm,
Jake would never forget the question that haunted him in the months that followed. When the impossible happens, who will you call? But there was another,
miracle.
quieter question that mattered even more. If the person who once betrayed you called for help, would you answer?
Maybe. Maybe. Yeah. That was this punishment. Punishment was up by its enemy by Dagatos. The link to the video will be in the description below. Go and check them out. And drop a like if you like. And comment below if you want to see more reaction like this one. And subscribe if you're new. And click the bell so you can be notified for a video upload in my back. Wow.